The Forgotten Secret. Chloe Harper always thought her life was relatively simple. She lived in a cozy suburban house in a quiet town in the United States, where mornings were filled with the chirping of birds and the smell of fresh coffee. Her marriage to Ethan had lasted almost 20 years, and together they had raised two lovely children, Emily, a 15-year-old teenager, and Ryan, a 10-year-old boy. The family routine was typical: taking the kids to school, doing household chores, and sharing quiet moments in the evening. But this everyday peace was about to be irrevocably shattered. It all started on an autumn morning when Chloe was organizing Ethan's office. The sun shone softly through the curtains, casting golden patterns on the wooden floor. Chloe, always meticulous, loved keeping the house in order. As she moved a pile of old papers from Ethan's desk, a worn envelope caught her attention. It was strange how it seemed different from the other documents. It was aged, with yellowed edges and an appearance that suggested it had been handled many times. Chloe's curiosity was immediately aroused. She felt a slight tension in the air as she held the envelope, as if its contents could change everything. She hesitated for a moment, but the temptation to discover what was inside was irresistible. With slightly trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was a sheet of paper with irregular handwriting, written hastily. "He is not who you think he is. The truth is buried in the shadows of the past, and you need to protect yourself before it's too late." Chloe read and reread the words, feeling a shiver run down her spine. Who had written that? And to whom was the message referring? Chloe's heart began to beat faster, and she realized that something much darker was at play. She kept the letter, but couldn't get the words out of her head. The tranquility of her home, which once comforted her, now seemed to hide secrets. In the days that followed, Chloe began to observe Ethan more closely, trying to understand if there was something she hadn't noticed before. And that was when she started to notice the changes. Ethan, who had always been a calm and affectionate man, began to act strangely. He started leaving the house at odd hours, often late at night, and returning in the early morning, always with a ready but unsatisfactory excuse. Chloe noticed that he was constantly restless, checking his phone frequently and looking out the window as if he was expecting something or someone. One night, she found him locked in his office, muttering to himself, his eyes wide and filled with dread. "Ethan, what's going on?" Chloe asked, her voice laden with concern. Ethan jumped as if he had been torn from a nightmare. He looked at Chloe with a vacant stare, as if she were a stranger. "Nothing. It's just work. I have a lot on my mind," he replied, but the tremor in his voice and the sweat on his forehead suggested otherwise. Chloe tried to believe his words, but doubt took root deep in her mind. The more she tried to rationalize Ethan's behavior, the more uneasy she felt. Even Emily and Ryan began to notice the changes in their father, questioning why he was so distant and strange. Determined to discover the truth, Chloe began investigating Ethan's past. She rummaged through old photo albums and documents, looking for anything that might explain his furtive behavior. It was then that she found a locked box at the bottom of a closet, hidden under a pile of old clothes. The box was heavy and covered in dust, as if it hadn't been touched in years. With trembling hands, Chloe found a small key that fit perfectly into the box's lock. Inside there was a treasure of forgotten memories, letters, photographs, and documents, all carefully stored. On top was a letter from Ethan's mother, addressed to him but never delivered. Chloe's curiosity grew. Why had Ethan never mentioned this letter? She picked up the letter and began to read. The handwriting was careful, but the words were filled with anguish and despair. Ethan's mother spoke of a dark secret she had discovered many years ago. Her husband, Ethan's father, was not the man everyone thought he was. In the shadows, he was a monster, a serial killer who terrorized the region. Chloe felt her heart stop for a moment. The words in the letter made her feel as if she were in a nightmare from which she couldn't escape. Ethan's mother described how she discovered her husband's true nature, a discovery that devastated her. In the basement of the house where Ethan grew up, she found irrefutable evidence of her husband's heinous crimes. He had a dual personality, and while everyone believed he was a dedicated family man, he lived a secret life of horror. The letter was a confession, a desperate cry for help that never came. Ethan's mother kept this secret, protecting her son from the truth for fear that he might inherit his father's monstrous traits. However, the secret consumed her, and she died carrying this burden, leaving only these letters as witnesses to her suffering. Chloe felt betrayed, not just by her husband, but by the life she thought she knew. How had Ethan kept this secret for so long? And why had he begun acting so strangely now? She wondered if he was afraid of following in his father's footsteps, fearing that the same evil that dwelled in his father might be inside him. Chloe's nights became sleepless. She replayed the words of the letter in her mind, imagining what else might be hidden in the shadows of their lives. One night, as she watched Ethan sleep beside her, she realized that the man she had shared her life with for so many years was now a terrifying enigma. The situation came to a head when Chloe finally confronted Ethan. She found the courage within herself to speak, even though her voice trembled. It was night, and the children were already asleep. The house was silent, but the air was heavy with tension. She found Ethan in the office, the same letter from his mother in his hands. He was sitting at the desk, his shoulders slumped and his head bowed, as if the weight of all these years had finally fallen upon him. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Chloe asked, her voice a whisper laden with emotion. Ethan slowly raised his eyes, his gaze full of pain and regret. "I thought that if I kept it a secret, I could control it. But the fear of becoming like him is consuming me." Chloe felt a wave of compassion and terror at the same time. "You're not like him, Ethan. But hiding this is only making things worse." Ethan lowered his head, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't know what to do. I thought that if I never talked about it, I could escape his fate. But it seems that the more I try to run away, the closer I get." Chloe saw the broken man in front of her and knew that he needed help. But she also knew that to protect her family, the truth had to be revealed. Ethan needed to face the past, and they needed to deal with the consequences together. That night, with the letter in hand, Chloe and Ethan went to the police. The revelation was shocking to everyone, and the ensuing investigation was swift and meticulous. Ethan's mother's letters provided crucial evidence that connected several unsolved crimes to his father, finally ending a cycle of terror that had lasted for decades. Even with the case closed, the emotional scars remained. The Harper family knew that their lives would never be the same again, but they also understood that facing the truth was the only way to move forward. That night, as Chloe lay down beside Ethan, she held his hand tightly. The shadows of the past had finally been dispelled, but the future was still uncertain. However, Chloe knew that together they could face anything, as long as the truth was the foundation of their relationship. The shadows of the past can be terrifying, but the truth is the only light that can dispel them. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story captivated you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with others who love a good mystery.